Good evening, all of you. So, we are here today for this session. May I know as to have you made your mind with respect to the optional as of now? More or less, PSIR. Yes? Yes. Fine. Fine. So, the agenda of today's session is, of course, to help us be certain about our choice, enable us to make that choice vis-a-vis the optional as well as be certain with respect to it, so that with gusto we can prepare our optional. Fine. Let's start with the session. The session is titled Want to Develop Critical Analysis, a sine qua non for UPSC. Yes, what does it mean? Sine qua non or sine qua non, it basically means it is essential. It is essential, it is critical for clearing UPSC. It is quintessential. Yes, there is no doubt that you require critical reasoning in UPSC throughout, across the papers of UPSC. In fact, starting from prelims, mains, as well as interview. Because why? They want you to become the future administrators of the country. Yes, so rote learning of facts, memorization of the facts, or mere description of the events is insufficient. We need to develop critical analysis. And one optional which assists us in developing critical analysis is in fact political science. Yes, so keeping that in mind, or we'll make a case around this idea, let us proceed with the session. Fine. First and foremost, without delving too much into it, are you aware how many optional subjects does UPSC offer? Yes, so there are a total of 48 optional subjects, out of which one needs to choose one optional subject. Yes, 25 are core subjects, such as the humanities subjects like anthropology, economics, geography, history, political science, philosophy. Then sciences. In sciences, you have botany, chemistry, geology, mathematics, physics, statistics, and zoology. Then few engineering and professional services, like if you are a student of agriculture, animal husbandry, law, management. And then there are these literature subjects where you have the 22 languages which are recognized by in the Constitution under Schedule 8 plus English literature. So 23 of the languages and remaining 25 are the core subjects. Fine. Choosing optional, of course, and when there is this humongous choice in front of us, at times it becomes a difficult task to actually choose our optional. So how do we go about choosing that optional? Yes. So let us see what is actually the requirement of this exam. Yes. Now, what actually separates selections from near misses? Now, what is that differentiating factor probably whereby few students clear the mains and others might not? It is not always that their preparation would have fallen short significantly. They are decent students who have actually cleared the prelims. And if you look at the number of students who are applying for this exam, how many on year-to-year basis apply? 10 to 13 lakh students would fill in the forms. How many would actually appear in prelims? 5 to 6 lakh. And then through the process of elimination, we reach 14,000 to 15,000 students. So a student who has been able to reach prelims does have a decent knowledge, does have decent information with him or her. So now what is that separates these 2500 from rest of the students who have probably cleared prelims. Yes, so with few marks when students miss out their clearing their mains after they have cleared the prelims and they have written the mains. So the difference isn't really the knowledge factor, it is how one thinks in the exam, how one thinks in the paper. Yes, so basically how you present your viewpoint, how do you structure your answers, do you engage in what is referred to as the critical analysis or not. Let us just look at this question. This is a previous year question which was asked in UPSC for PSIR. So it is a 2023 question whereby they had said, how does NITI Aayog as a policy think tank with shared vision visualize reorganization of planning in India? Yes, so how does it visualize this reorganization of planning in India? Yes, justify your answer. Yes, so maybe I've just roughly sketched one answer. And if you were to write an answer, one way of writing the answer is probably that NITI Aayog, when was it established? Only in 2015 through a resolution passed by the cabinet as a policy think tank with a shared vision. What is the objective of NITI Aayog? So maybe you mention a few points to evolve a shared vision, and borrowing from the question. Shared vision of national development priorities to foster cooperative federalism, to foster maybe competitive federalism. Yes, to pay special attention to those sections of society which are at risk of missing out from the economic development. Yes, one addresses how it functions as a think tank or a resource center for funneling the new ideas and forwarding it to the center. That is the job of NITI Aayog, that you funnel the various ideas. Yes, you develop an ecosystem whereby different ideas flow into that funnel and you funnel it and take it down to center. If it needs similar idea, take it down to the states if it needs similar idea. Now based on the persuasive value of that idea, if that idea is good enough, the center will accept or the states will accept. That is the purpose of think tank. Yes, so it is a mind exercise, and its job is to funnel out or give these ideas to center and state so as to ensure development. And through this approach, now since it is acting like this think tank, it is acting like a funnel. Through this approach, it visualizes the reorganization of planning in India. So this is sample 1 of the answer. Let's look at the sample 2 of the answer. Yes, so here I have written down the broad approach. So the approach can be, you introduce a NITI Aayog. See, what is the question saying? NITI Aayog as a policy think tank with shared vision, visualize the reorganization of planning. Yes. So if it is saying reorganization of planning, what it is indicating us towards? Yes, it was a replacement of a planning commission. So if we are to justify, if we actually are to justify this answer that it actually reorganizes planning in India, we have to make a comparison. Only then can you justify reorganization. If I simply tell what NITI Aayog is going to do, that is one part of the answer. But the question is what? Reorganizing the planning process. So reorganizing, I have to tell previously what used to happen and now how is the planning commission going to change that. Yes, fine. So that is the idea. So here I will introduce NITI Aayog in context of planning commission. Yes, why need? I will not restrict myself to just saying that yes, it reorganizes the planning process. Why there was need to reorganize the planning process? Yes, then how does NITI Aayog visualize the reorganization of the planning process in context of maybe planning commission, and conclude while highlighting the challenges. Yes, Fine. Now if I were to, and I have a detailed answer, I have written a detailed answer there. Now if just looking at the broad approach here and here, which approach is likely to get you more marks? Yes, it is the sample 2. Yes, why? Because ये approach क्या है actually? This is a descriptive approach. We are just telling what NITI Aayog, when it was formed, what is the objective, how does it reorganize planning. We stop it at that. But a critical analysis makes you think deeper. So why reorganization? How reorganization in comparison to the previous mode of planning? Yes, so basically critical analysis would require us to write an answer in a more nuanced fashion. But before we get into it, let us just see for once, what is this critical analysis? We have been saying that it is the sine qua non for UPSC. If you want to clear UPSC, there is no other way except bringing in critical analysis. Yes, when we practice answer writing, when maybe you go for your mock interviews, yes, what are you always practicing? You are practicing critical analysis. You are learning. And through this, we generally say that when you prepare for civil services, it is a very enriching journey. And you might have heard, irrespective of one, if one plans to actually write this exam, maybe one should prepare for this exam. Everyone, once in a lifetime, should prepare for this exam. Yes, why is it said? Because this exam requires critical analysis. So if you are going to prepare, you will try and learn that process of critical analysis. Yes, and the point that I am trying to make through this session is that this critical analysis is very much part of this subject called political science. Political science is called the master science. Yes, thinkers have referred it to as the master science. Yes, why master science? Because you read about many issues from various perspectives. And none of the perspective is actually false. You see a gradual evolution of the thought process. You have one idea, you will have a counter idea. Then, so there is we call it thesis. The idea is thesis. Then you will have a counter idea. That is antithesis. But, so for some time it might seem that the antithesis is true. But in reality, you will realize both these arguments actually have some value. So you come out with a synthesis. And then this synthesis becomes a thesis. Then you have an antithesis and once again synthesis. So this process continues to go around. For example, yes, I was just telling you what happens generally is that you have an idea. This idea is known as the thesis. Then you will have counter view to this idea. Yes, so that becomes the antithesis. And then you will realize that there is truth in both these arguments, so this becomes synthesis. But can we reach the ultimate solution? पेन से पहुंच गए हैं हम, है ना? निर्वाणा तो नहीं पहुंचे हम. Nirvana probably would be the synthesis, yes? So what will happen? The synthesis once again becomes the thesis and this process continues to move around. For example, let me give you an example. There used to be once a system called feudalism. Yes? Feudalism में क्या था? The society was divided into the landlord and the serfs. It was a hierarchical society. What was the nature of this society? It was hierarchical and hereditary. Yes, it was an hereditary society. Yes, this was a rigid society. So if you were born a landlord, you will become a landlord. If you are born a serf, you will remain a serf. There was no scope, and there was no scope of upward mobility. Yes, and maybe this system was exploitative. Hierarchical जब आ गया तो किसी के पास power है और कोई subdued है. Yes, so there is an element of violence, there is an element of control. So of course, over the period of time, this society was not good enough. So this society was replaced by another society called the capitalist society, or capitalism came into existence. Those who rebelled against feudalism, they moved from villages, went to the cities, and they started producing the goods and selling the goods. Yes, and so this is an agrarian society, but with industrial revolution, with workmanship also, and you can own your own workshop and produce something and sell something. So you find capitalism arose. But eventually this capitalism also developed some problem. So at one point, this was the synthesis, and it became the thesis, but then problems also came about. So this became the counter argument. This became and when this system settled down, it appeared that it is a very progressive system, because this was a meritocratic society. As much of hard work you do, as much of intelligence you show, you can grow in the society, social mobility you can achieve. Yes, so this was a more meritocratic society, but eventually this society also developed problem. So a counter argument came in the form of communism. There were many other thinkers also, but very systematic studies developed by Karl Marx. So we associate communism with Karl Marx. So communism gave an antithesis. But once again, communism as hypothesized by Karl Marx could not really come into existence. Yes, and eventually you find this capitalist system. Communism, what came into existence? We will study all this in detail. Yes, there was state-led communism. Communism as given by Karl Marx was a classless society. यहाँ पे हर जगह क्या है? Class division है. Class division मतलब है ना? Somebody on top, somebody below. So there is always exploitation. So he wanted an exploitation-free society. So classless. And if there is no class, he said there is no need for state. So stateless. But to establish, it is an utopian idea. So what came into existence is state-led communism. Yes, for example, what we see in case of China presently, there is one communist party which has established the communist China. On the other hand, capitalism also reformed itself. So in context of this counter argument, there was truth in both these. ठीक है, capitalism में extreme liberty दिया गया था, and in communism or in socialism or in state-led communism, what we see was there was a lot of focus on equality. So this is the thesis, this is the counter argument and synthesis in terms of a welfare state, whereby there is liberty, mixed economy. Yes, whereby there is a liberty to pursue individual enterprise, but also the state is going to, है ना, यहाँ पे state-led communism में state के पूरा control है. यहाँ पे night watchman state है. State has no function except maintenance of law and order. Minimal state है, यहाँ पे maximum state है. Yes, so we arrive at a synthesis whereby state continues to perform important function, but state does not control every aspect of man's life. Yes, state will provide social services. Do you understand? So when we discuss in detail, you can see this evolution happening. Yes, and so this is this entire process. As things develop, your thinking modifies and you establish a new system. Yes, then welfare state got established, but soon welfare state also developed some problem. So we arrived at what is known as neoliberalism. Yes, in 1990s, the globalization that happened on the neoliberal ideas. But once again, by 2012, 2013, we understood there is problem with this system. What is that problem? It is creating economy of 1%. Yes, see, right now I do not have the time to explain everything in detail, but I am just giving you a hint. If you can understand feudalism, capitalism, communism, we understand. Welfare state, we understand. Where state is going to provide social services. It is going to run the PDS system. It is going to provide old age pension, unemployment allowance. It is going to build social infrastructure in terms of educational institute, in terms of running the government hospitals. So that is the welfare state. Capitalist state would do none of it. And state-led communism, the entire economy would be controlled by the state. But that is not there in the welfare state. Hamare yahan kya? Mixed economy tha, I told you, for example. Yes, so that is the idea. But over the period of time, this welfare state seemed to become overburdened. Too many functions to be performed by the state. State is providing so many social services. But now to provide that social services, it needs money. To a certain extent, taxes is meeting that money, but that is insufficient. So state has to become part of the economy. It has to establish PSUs. And the profit that will be earned in the PSUs will be used for social welfare. Plus, when it is providing so many services, it needs to hire those many people. So this state became very, very bureaucratic. Yes, आपने सुना होगा ये सब terms, fiscal deficit. So this state, more, despite taxes, despite PSUs, started, the expenditure was still more than the income. Income का source क्या था? Tax था और PSU की earnings थी. But despite that, the expenditure was much more. So it started persistently running fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit होगा तो क्या होगा? Inflation हो जाएगा. Yes, so it will create many challenges. So ultimately, UK, में there was this Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. She said there is no alternative but to roll back the state. There was President Ronald Reagan in US. He also agreed, yes. The world knew that welfare state is becoming unsustainable. So we reduced the function of the state. Yes, so once again, reducing welfare functions significantly came down. Today also we see disinvestments, government PSU, disinvestment from PSUs, privatization. And so we also as part of it LPG reforms वगैरह हमने undertake किए है ना, private sector को greater leeway, more greater leeway in the economy and all such things. But initially it gave major returns. India, for example, became a reckoning global power. Our economy started witnessing very high growth rates. Yes, but eventually what has happened across the world for that matter, it has, when state reduced its welfare function, what has happened? The income inequality has started to grow too much. Yes, so we enter into a phase which is known as economy of 1%. So the economy, rich is becoming richer and poor is becoming poorer. Yes, so this problems is faced by neoliberalism. And when this problem persisted, so across the world, what are we seeing presently, for example? Rise of rightist governments across the world. Rightist government, think about Trump. Yes, they will talk about border security, anti-immigration, protective tariffs, they will impose protectionism. Yes, they will adopt such policies, है ना? तो दुनिया भर में, it is not just US, है ना, across the world. France में you witness कि जो वहाँ की far right political parties, they have started going for better performance, electoral performance. In India, for example, you have BJP in power. है ना? There were two major political parties. One is Congress, the other is BJP. Congress is located, there is this ideological spectrum. ठीक है, एक तरफ लेफ्ट होता है, जो कम्युनिज्म जो कार्ल मार्क्स ने बताया था, है ना, उसमें क्या है, यू आर प्रो लेबर, एंटी इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट, एंटी कैपिटलिस्ट, प्रो लेबर, है ना, और वहां पे मैंने बताया स्टेटलेस बता देते हैं ये इवेंचुअली, है ना, ही हैड सेड वर्कर्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड should unite and fight against capitalism. He said you have nothing to lose but your chains. ठीक है, तो एक होता है लेफ्ट, फार लेफ्ट, जहां पे कम्युनिस्ट बैठे हैं, और एक होता है फार राइट, वहां पे हम पढ़ेंगे पॉलिटिकल साइंस में फासिस्ट बैठे होते हैं, है ना, वो बहुत स्टेट को बहुत ज्यादा मान्यता देंगे. दे विल टॉक अबाउट स्टेट्स सिक्योरिटी, दे थिंक ऑफ स्टेट एज अ लिविंग बीइंग, थिंक ऑफ हिटलर एंड हिज फिलॉसफी. Yes, he gave the concept of Lebensraum. State requires, state is like a living animal which requires more space. Therefore, they will go for wars, expansionist foreign policy hoga, है ना, they will go for protectionism of their domestic industry, all such things. Yes, so you have in India, we have two major political parties. One is Congress, Congress which is located at the center of the political spectrum, little tilt towards left. And if you look at BJP, it is on the little right side of the political spectrum. Yes, so you find that across the world, there is this phenomena of rise of rightist parties. Why? Because neoliberalism led to inequality across the world. Are you following me? समझ में आ रहा है ना? I am not getting into too much details. I am just saying those facts which are going to make a sense for a train of thought, for this interconnectedness, है ना? तो क्या हुआ? I told you neoliberalism led to economy of 1%, rich becoming very rich, poor becoming very poor. So people who are becoming poorer, अभी हमारे यहाँ पे भी क्या बताया जा रहा है कि the middle class has not been growing, है ना, the growth rate has actually stagnated, है ना, तो GDP का भी बता, नए डेटाज आए हैं ना, दैट द प्रीवियस डेटाज के हिसाब से हम ग्रो नहीं कर रहे थे, प्रोबेबली आवर इकोनॉमी हैज नॉट बीन ग्रोइंग एज वेल एज वी हैड थॉट. सो एनीवेज, इंडिया में अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड देयर इज ग्रोथ ऑफ इनइक्वालिटी, और जो ये पीपल, द मिडिल क्लास हु आर बिकमिंग पुअरर, और द पुअरर सेक्शन हु आर बिकमिंग ऑल द मोर पुअरर. यस, सो what they want? They want at least a government which will check external competition. They want a government that will keep immigrants out, that will have a protectionist tariffs so as to check international competition so that they are able to survive. Yes, so across the world what we are witnessing is rise of this rightist governments. So there is this trend, do you see? Yes, so yahi hai, and maybe we have not come out with where, let's see where we go next. By 2012-13, we started understanding that neoliberalism is also a problem. We need to change this system, but we have yet not arrived at a solution. Okay, so the solution is probably in the making. Fine, so you find that systems keep on changing, evolving. So there is one system, then after a few years problem, then you change, reform, move forward. That is how. Yes, so what is, so my idea was that we were talking about this argument and counter argument and synthesis, and then synthesis becomes the thesis once again. Fine, like coming back to the topic, what is critical analysis and why UPSC demands it. First, let us understand what is this critical analysis. When we say critical, yes, it comprises two words, critical and analysis. Analysis we understand. Analysis का मतलब क्या है? Cause, effect, relation. Yes, you evaluate the pros, the cons. Yes, है ना? Critical generally हम negative के साथ associate करते हैं. Yes, so when we are saying critical analysis, do not think of it as criticism. Do not, it is not simply criticism, it is not simply negative opinion. Yes, what it is the ability to break down an issue. Yes, so if you have an issue, you are having across the world rise of rightist government. So this is a phenomena that we have, and we have noted that there is this issue, there is this development. So we will break down this issue, है ना, कि कैसा चल रहा है, what is the trend, यूरोप का क्या trend है ना, यूरोप में ज़्यादा far right आ रहे हैं या maybe in the developing countries, या what is happening in US, है ना. So we will break down the issue. We will look into the economic factor, we will look into political factor, we will look into funding of political parties maybe. So we will have to break down an issue, bring in various perspectives. Yes. So what are different perspectives. Now we being from PSIR, we might call it the liberal perspective, the communist perspective, the Marxist perspective, the communitarian perspective. Yes, there can be various perspectives. But generally speaking, within a society, what the capitalists are saying, what the workers are saying, what is the Brahmin saying, and what is the Dalit saying. So we bring in the various perspectives, the various thought processes. Yes, and see how does it relate to the issue. Identify assumptions and reach a reasoned position. That is important. Yes, so you will not engage in mere description of the issue. Agar I say critically analyze rise of rightist governments across the world. You will not just describe me the rise of rightist government through evidences and facts. Yes, and as you will say, okay, there is decline of the liberal parties or the leftist parties, and we see rise of the right across the world. That is insufficient. If I ask you critical analysis, you will tell me reason. You will say, according to this perspective, maybe this is happening because of this. According to the capitalist perspective, this is the reason. According to the Dalit perspective, this is the reason. Yes, so we will weigh in perspective. We will identify assumptions also. The assumption why people are voting for the rightist government, it is because maybe the poorer people feel, this rightist government is going to shield them from external competition. Yes, the capitalist might feel, oh, the rightist government is going to support the national bourgeois, है ना, और ये कुछ है ना, तो इनके हम biases को भी identify करेंगे. अगर कोई कह रहा है कि this is the best government, है ना, if they are saying this is the best government, we look कि ये ऐसा क्यों कह रहा है, इसके कोई biases हैं, इसके कोई vested interest है. So we will identify all that, and then we will come out with we will reach a reasoned position. We will take a reasoned position. So that is the idea, that it is not merely criticism, it is not merely opinion, it is ability to break down an issue, bring in the various perspectives, identify assumptions, and reach a reasoned position. Yes, and that is what we see. We see that we have, yes. So if you see, how does NITI Aayog as a policy think tank with shared vision visualize the reorganization of planning? So how does NITI Aayog as a policy think tank with shared vision visualize the reorganization of planning in India and justify? So you have to give reasons for your answer. You have to justify your answer. Yes, so we have broken down. यहाँ पे हमने क्या किया, पहले सैंपल में सिर्फ नीति आयोग की बात कर दी और बस बता दिया how it is reorganizing planning by just saying what it is going to do. But if it is critical analysis, if I want to get good marks in this answer, I will understand NITI Aayog as a policy think tank with shared vision visualizes reorganization. This word will tell me compare it with planning commission. Without comparing it with planning commission, I will not get my answer. Plus, I will say how and why. जबकि सवाल सिर्फ how है, but I will not stop at how. I will also get into why it is reorganizing planning in India. Yes, maybe briefly I'll just touch upon yes. So we have introduced, it was formed to replace the Planning Commission, which was established in 1950. Yes, Planning Commission was established in an era of socialistic planning. Because the paradigm of planning has changed since adoption of LPG reforms. उससे पहले welfare state थे, है ना, 5-year planning वगैरह करते थे, है ना, अब हमने 5-year planning भी बंद कर दी है. Why? In context of LPG reforms itself. So we call it, there is an ideological shift in the realm of planning. We have entered into an era of what is referred to as indicative planning. Yes, we have entered into an era of what is called an indicative planning. So from centralized planning, since that paradigm is over, and we have entered into from centralized to indicative planning. So we needed a new organization to keep up with this changing paradigm of planning. Centralized planning matlab kya hai? Center is going to tell how the entire country is to develop, how the states are to develop. Indicative planning matlab kya hai? Center is only going to give you ideas. It will indicate. For example, manufacturing sector needs to develop. So to nudge the manufacturing sector, the center will come out with production linked incentive plan. है ना? The AI has to develop, so maybe SEZs, special economic zones for AI would be established. Fine. So it is going to indicative planning. So if a state is able to achieve 10% growth in, say, development of semiconductors, there would be a 10% rebate on taxation. So you are nudging that you do these things. समझ में आ रहा है? It is not going to say, no, you have to do this. I am establishing this industry. You set up this manufacturing plant. The capacity has to be this much. You are just saying that if you do that, there will be a 10% rebate on taxation. तो वो क्या indicate कर रहा है? These are the sectors where you should focus upon. Labor intensive sector वगैरह वगैरह. Fine. So since the paradigm underwent change, why need for reorganization? तो सिर्फ ideological shift in the realm of planning यही एक कारण नहीं है. उसके अलावा क्या है? Advent of era of coalition government. Centralized planning में कौन strong था center और state के बीच में? Center, है ना? Center was very strong. But now with coalition era, we will study later on that what has happened. Actually, the states, there has been relative transfer of power towards state. There is a regionalization of a political party system. है ना? Except for the recent government. अभी जो NDA government चल रही है 2014 onwards. 2014 and 19, BJP was able to secure majority, necessary majority. 2024, we once again coalition government की ज़रूरत पड़ गई. 2014-19 they maintained the coalition, but BJP on its own had the capacity to form the central government. It did not require the support of the NDA coalition. But prior to that, from 1989 till 2014, no central government could be formed without the support of regional parties. I don't know if you are hearing the news, जो political news चल रहा है. For example, what they are saying, that the Congress, the UPA coalition, DMK was a partner in that. But this time what has happened? DMK lost the elections in Tamil Nadu. And now you have Vijay who has come out with a new political party and Congress has sided with it. So they have sidelined their partner DMK. तो वही, और पहले DMK was necessary for the coalition of UPA. And that DMK, for example, we would also study that it used to influence center's foreign policy vis-a-vis Sri Lanka because of the Tamil factor. ठीक है? तो ये जब coalition era आया, तो what happened? There was strengthening of the state relative to the center. There was transfer of power regionalization of political parties हुआ, regional political parties became essential for formation of coalition at the center. Without their support, government could not be formed at the center. So now if they are going to give support to form the government, they are going to demand something in return. They will say that you have to take care of my state interests. Yes, you have to give me autonomy in planning maybe. Fine, so that is what. So you find that there is advent of the era of coalition politics, growing assertiveness of the state governments. Yes, then there was also an ideological shift in the realm of planning. I've told you, from centralized to indicative. See, planning, socio-economic planning is an issue in the concurrent list. So as such, both center and state have power over it. Now, but when we were prior to the LPG reforms, yes, prior to LPG reforms, we used to go for centralized planning. So there would be 5-year plans and all such things, which continued until recently. ना एक बार में सब change नहीं होता. But that was a time where there would be centralized planning. Why? Because the state continued to be also in the commanding heights of the economy. See, let us understand, why did we adopt centralized planning? We adopted centralized planning because as a newly independent country, we had very limited resources. So if there was no centralized planning, and there might be overlapping use of resources, and resource wastage might take place. So at that point of time, we decided that we should go for a completely centralized model so that we know exactly how and where the resources are being utilized. Second reason was that we had seen USSR. USSR went for these 5-year planning and centralized planning model. So when was USSR formed? In the 1920s में. उससे पहले Tsarist Russia, Imperial Russia था, फिर Communist Revolution हुआ 1917 में, Bolshevik Revolution बोलते हैं. उसके बाद है ना वहाँ पे एक Civil War हुआ, तो 1921 around things started to settle down for Russia, for Soviet Russia. Let's call it USSR itself. So from there, starting from 1921, when the economic situation was very, very poor, Tsarist Russia was one of the very poor countries. And an agrarian country, industrial revolution का beginning ही हो रहा था, ठीक है? So very, very poor country, and then there is revolution, there is civil war, so things begin to settle by 1920-21. From there till 1945, it emerged as a superpower. है ना, USA and USSR कोल्ड वॉर में एक दूसरे से लड़ रहे थे, दो सुपर पावर बने, है ना, इकोनॉमी एंड मिलिटरीली दे बिकेम वेरी डेवलप्ड compared to where did they start. They were the leaders of the world. And how did, within those 20-25 years, through centralized planning, USSR witnessed rapid growth. So this became very attractive for all the newly independent countries. So most newly independent countries adopted centralized planning. Also, it was the time of welfare state. And the state was also to perform so many functions. State was participating in the economy, going for centralized planning. Party system भी हम बाद में पढ़ेंगे. उस समय Congress system, जो major political party थी वो Congress थी, which was in power in center and in the states as well. So we could go for this centralized planning. But over the period of time, we have the BOP crisis हुआ, पहले Gulf War हुआ, है ना, Gulf War हुआ, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, है ना, उसके बाद US and UN sanctioned that you can take action against Iraq because it went for unprovoked aggression against Kuwait. लेकिन अब ये क्या है, oil producing countries, तो global oil prices बढ़ गए, हमको spot market में जाके जो price पे oil available था, we had to purchase that oil. So as a consequence, what happened? We had limited forex, and that forex became depleted. So we went to IMF to borrow money. IMF said, we will give you money only when you structurally reform your economy. You adopt LPG reforms. You adopt a new economic policy. And now new economic policy, LPG reform, what is full form? Liberalization. Liberalization. Yes, reducing restrictions. Privatization. Private sector is going to have the sway. And globalization. So engage in global free trade. So when there is liberalization, greater liberty, greater freedom, and also privatization. Private sector is going to lead the economy. Yes, so you cannot have centralized planning continue. So this decision of establishment of NITI Aayog actually does not happen overnight. Though 2014 Modi government is elected to power at center, and 2015 Planning Commission gets replaced with NITI Aayog. But it is not PM Modi alone or overnight BJP decided that we need to change this Planning Commission and form NITI Aayog. Discussion on it was going on since Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time. So Atal Bihari Vajpayee was engaging in discussion on it. Dr. Manmohan Singh under UPA for 10 years, they were talking about it. He had his chief economic advisor, C. Rangarajan. A committee was formed to look into how to reform Planning Commission. Yes, what changes we need to bring about. So they had suggested us this idea that अभी तक Planning Commission में क्या होता था? Planning Commission में they would force, Planning Commission, what Planning Commission would do, Planning Commission was made as the planning agency. You have to plan for centralized plans बनाने होंगे, 5-year plan, annual plan बनाना होगा. But over the period of time, what happened? Planning Commission would also became the allocator of funds. जो planned funds थे, वो उसका allocator बन गया Planning Commission. Now, if Planning Commission became the allocator of fund, it got that arm twisting power. It would look into detail the state plans, the state annual plans, 5-year plans, and very micro detail में analyze करता और reject कर देता बहुत बार plans. Would say that you bring a change to your plans. If the state would not agree, they'll say we will not give you planned funds to between the center and state. The Finance Commission. Finance Commission has been created by the Constitution to perform that role. Yes, so you find that with LPG reform, with strengthening, with emergence of coalition era and strengthening of the state, it is not necessary that the center will always have to play the primary role or a very strict role. So even now the center continues to plan that, play that role, but how? By indicating, by the persuasive value of idea through NITI Aayog. Plus in NITI Aayog, there is also participation of the states. There is a governing council which is the head body, and that governing council comprises CMs and lieutenant governors of the UTs as well. है ना, और वहाँ पे अगर elected government है in UT, like in Delhi, in Jammu and Kashmir, in Puducherry, तो CMs of those UTs will also be present. Fine. So now they together discuss and deliberate what kind of planning, what kind of model, वो semiconductor को push करो, अच्छा maybe leather industry since it is labor intensive, garment industry since it is labor intensive, we need to push that. And so now there is a cooperative federalism. They cooperate, they consult each other, they deliberate with each other and then take a decision. And they are not able to arm twist the state. They are just able to funnel the idea. If they find it nice, they will adopt that. Otherwise, no. Yes, fine. So why need for reorganization? These 2 points we have seen. Also, there were certain issues with the Planning Commission, as I have told you. You can read upon it. And क्या हुआ था? There was, over the period of time, overcrowding of the Planning Commission with the cabinet ministers themselves. In fact, the Prime Minister was made the chairman of the Planning Commission. Why? Because it was an executive, and a cabinet resolution से create हुआ था Planning Commission भी. It was not a statutory, not a constitutional body. तो उसके पास लोगों को उसकी बात सुननी चाहिए. So how would states listen to it? if the Prime Minister itself is the chair, so that would give it the necessary importance. Plus, over the period of time, cabinet ministers started filling up that position. It got distracted from its core functions of formulating the plan. It was more bothered about execution and evaluation of the plan. तो बहुत centralized, बहुत सारे functions perform करने लग गया. It started affecting center-state relation. How? By arm twisting the states. Ignored the diversity of the country in its enthusiasm for planning for the whole country. है ना? तो you have to look into the local expertise and accordingly come up with the plan. And then trampled upon, encroached upon the function of finance commission. Fine, so all these issues were there, and so it was, and we had to replace planning commission and come out with a new body. So how NITI Aayog revisualizes planning by active involvement of the state? Yes, it has visualized, it visualizes what is known as Team India. Yes, it is expected to follow a bottom-up and decentralized approach to planning, unlike the top-down and centralized approach to planning under Planning Commission. Yes, NITI Aayog would develop mechanism to formulate credible plans from village level and aggregate it on top. It would pay special attention to the sections of the society that may be at the risk of not benefiting from the economic progress. Yes, it fosters cooperative and competitive. Cooperative मैंने बता दिया, governing council में both center and state and UTs are present. But competitive कैसे? They have also come out with these indices, SDG index, which ranks states based on performance. So health index, sanitation index, so it encourages, है ना, जब ranking होगी तो encouragement होता है. Yes, it recognizes that strong states make strong nations. तो इस तरह का जो vocabulary है वो use किया हमने. Ideas है ना ये, by functioning as a think tank, it है ना, it acts like that funnel. Yes, by bringing greater accountability in the system, by collecting data on performance on real-time basis and undertaking mid-course collection. तो planning commission क्या करता था? पूरे 5 साल that 5-year plan would work. After completion of the 5-year plan, they would evaluate the plan. But now with technology interventions available, we can go for real-time monitoring of the outcome of the plan and take mid-course correction. So that is brought within NITI Aayog. Yes, so all this helps. And conclusion, how are we concluding? इस अब हमारा conclusion देखो, कहीं हमें challenge लिखने का मौका नहीं मिला नीति आयोग का. But does it mean everything is hunky dory with NITI Aayog? Balanced view लिखना है ना, हमें comprehensive answer लिखना है और balanced view लिखना है. We have said yes, it reorganizes planning and all these things are good. And a planning commission had these problems, or when all that we have written. But it does not mean everything is hunky-dory with NITI Aayog and this is the perfect body. There are some problems with NITI Aayog as well. So where do I bring the challenges? I have just 15 marks or 20 marks, I have to write this answer. I cannot start a paragraph on challenges. So I conclude by bringing in a sentence. The primary challenge, एक दो challenge मैंने conclusion में लिख दिया. देखो, NITI Aayog marks a watershed in the developmental discourse in India. But without, अभी दिक्कत क्या है NITI Aayog की? Same as Planning Commission, it is a non-statutory, non-constitutional body. So without legal status and the power to make budgetary allocation, जो Planning Commission के पास थे, तो it got a greater say in influencing the states कि तुम ये करो, हम जो बता रहे हैं वो सही है वो करो. बट नाउ प्रॉब्लम क्या है ना, वही है, ट्रेड ऑफ है. अब बजटरी एलोकेशन का पावर चला गया तो इन्फ्लुएंस करने का पावर भी कम हो गया, परसुएशन का पावर भी कम हो गया. दैट हैज बिकम अ प्रॉब्लम. एंड विदाउट द पावर टू मेक बजटरी एलोकेशंस, its recommendations are merely advisory in nature, which results in weak influence over state level policy implementation. Fine. So a comprehensive answer बता दिया हमने, yes or no, है ना? So we have, so that is what we say when we talk about bringing in critical analysis. When we have said what makes the difference between selection and somebody missing out from selection. A person who has written the sample 1 has also read the NITI Aayog and Planning Commission. It is about how he is actively thinking in the paper. Yes, so we need to write an answer which is rich in critical analysis, and it is an inherently a skill which is developed. बाकी subject का पता नहीं है ना, to limited extent वहाँ पे develop होता होगा. Natural sciences में तो बहुत कम chances होते हैं critical analysis का development. वहाँ facts है या false है, true या untrue है, वहाँ कोई है ना ऐसे biases, assumptions, there are no layers to an argument. वो social sciences में आता है. And social science में भी खासकर कहाँ पे? Political science. Why? Because if actually it is a master science. Fine. So you find that, that is the point we are trying to make, that this way of thinking automatically develops as part of this paper, and only when you write answers like this, when you bring in that critical analysis, is when you get marks. Fine. So we have seen that we broke down that issue, we weighed the perspective, identified. यहाँ assumption identify करने का chance नहीं है, but फिर भी हमने वो किया कि हमने ये नहीं कहा कि हाँ arm twisting सिर्फ बुरी ही थी, but now with no power of budgetary allocation, ये भी एक fact है कि ability to influence the state has actually reduced. It has become merely advisory. पहले वो कहने को advisory था, but actually real powers थे. अब but what has happened? It has become merely advisory. Its power to influence has actually reduced. So positive, negative दोनों एक ही point में है ना? That is what we have reached, and reached a reasoned position. Reasoned position किया कि नहीं हमने, है ना? We did not say everything is hunky dory with NITI Aayog. We also brought in that critical element that yes, there are some issues with NITI Aayog as well. Fine. And also critical analysis is not just required in this example that we have shown, which is from political science paper or in your optional paper. It is required across the examination process. It starts from prelims. Prelims you cannot, prelims mein there are 100 questions. Yes, and nobody, how so well one might have prepared, would know all 100 questions. In fact, nobody would even know 50 questions. Forget about 100, है ना? क्या आजकल क्या कट ऑफ जाती है? 80s, 90s, है ना? तो you find that nobody even knows 50 questions. किसी को एकदम clearly, precisely नहीं पता होता. You might have some idea, but you will not be able to say, oh, out of these 4 options, this is the right option, and I know it by the virtue of my memory. But you end up attempting maybe 70 questions, maybe 60 questions. Few students attempt 80 questions, 85 questions. How do they attempt? It is through utilization of this faculty of critical analysis. When we eliminate the choices, है ना? प्रीलिम्स में आंसर्स कैसे सॉल्व होते हैं? 20 क्वेश्चन ही होंगे जिसका आपको बिल्कुल शॉर्ट आंसर पता होता है. Otherwise you use logic, you use elimination technique, and that is how you go about answering those questions. Yes, then GS mains. And a GS mains mein today you find questions which mention critically examine, evaluate, comment as directives which require you to go for critical analysis. Describe बहुत कम मिलेगा. Describe is a descriptive answer, but otherwise you have to go for analytical answer. You have to always address this factor why. Then optional, you have to build arguments engaging around thinkers, applying theory to, for example in PSIR, we say section A of both papers is theory and section B of paper 1 is Indian government and politics, है ना? तो generally polity जैसा है वो, ठीक है? और दूसरा section B of paper 2 is international relations. But we will not write same answer in GS and same answer in your optional paper. You will have to link theory with the recent examples. So all that requires you to actively apply your mind. Yes, critical mental faculties. Essay क्या है? Essay is all about critical analysis. If you write a descriptive essay, you will not get much marks. You have to make that essay and engaging for the examiner. If I give you 500 or maybe 1 page, just a mere description, and a mere description of this building, would you like reading? Or if there, with description I tell you, oh, why this room was chosen to be the classroom, why this is the setting that we have gone for, maybe the visibility of faculty is more, maybe the sound is better. And when you have analysis, you like to read more, you bring in concepts. है ना, हम ऐसे कहते हैं रस होना चाहिए ऐसे में. तो रस कहाँ से आता है? आइडियाज से आता है. You have to bring these nice engaging ideas. An interview is defending your position. So once again, you have to, है ना, you have to apply mind. है ना, analysis के through के बिना नहीं होता है. तो across the entire process, you require critical analysis. And that is probably one of the reasons, actually, if I can jump, why PSIR students tend to perform very well when it comes to interview stage. Because एक तो ये है कि IR और polity दोनों अच्छे से prepared होते हैं ना. 2-3 areas हैं जहाँ से सवाल आते हैं interview में. One is your DAF, your detailed application form, the form that you are going to fill and give about yourself. Then, see, let us remember, they are examiners who are retired people. They get up every morning, read the newspapers and come to take the interview. So they will ask you on the current developments. Current developments में कौन से areas? एक है polity, one nation, one election, the delimitation exercise, है ना, the Nari empowerment bill, yes, है ना, the other is economics, the third is IR. So if you have polity, which is GS में भी पढ़ रहे हो, यहाँ पे भी पढ़ रहे हो, IR दोनों तरफ पढ़ रहे हो, well developed, plus you have this ability of analyzing, understanding, and you tend to perform better in your interview. Yes, once again, the very nature of the subjects makes you develop that capacity which enables you in the entire examination process. Now, why UPSC demands critical analysis? ठीक है, हमने ये तो बोल दिया कि across the entire process. In fact, one of the reasons why UPSC or civil services examination is generally considered a tough exam, or as I have told you, an enriching journey that you should, one should actually engage in this preparation. Why? Because once again, it requires a development of critical analysis. That is what it is testing. And the problem with Indian education system especially, which focuses so much on STEM studies, is that we do not really develop critical analysis. Our society also prefers obedience. You do not question your elders, you obey what your teacher says, what your elders say. So critical analysis का capacity हमारे यहाँ हम ज़्यादा emphasize नहीं करते. Anyways, why UPSC demands it? Because you are going to be, as I told you, future administrators. You will be responsible for governance of the district. And when an issue props up in the district, you will have to understand it, see it from various perspectives, establish cause-effect relation, bring in biases. Okay, this group has this bias. This group, their cultural preferences is this versus their cultural preferences. So you have to, when you are getting so much information from your juniors, from your seniors, you have to factor in the biases, the personal preferences and all that. And then take a reasoned view so that you are able to come out with a solution to the problem. And a job easy nahi hai. And the job that we are preparing for requires that analysis. In fact, once again, as part of PSIR itself, or also in GS2, governance section, we study that civil servants in developing countries have a more tougher job than civil servants in developed countries. Why? Because in developed countries, they have agreed on the path of development. They have reached a particular level in terms of societal economic development. They have very well set precedences. ये प्रॉब्लम होता है तो ये प्रोटोकॉल है, ये प्रॉब्लम होता है तो ये प्रोटोकॉल है, ये प्रॉब्लम होता है तो ये प्रोटोकॉल है. That is very well developed in developed world. But in countries like India, multicultural societies, developing countries, so much chaos, democracy, liberal democracy, you find what happens is that precedences are not very well developed. We are facing many new challenges as we go about. Yes? So, अब कुछ तो new challenges है that the entire climate change, है ना, टेक्नोलॉजी जो आजकल इतना फास्ट ग्रो हो रही है, वो सबके लिए चैलेंजिंग है. But otherwise, at the societal level, they have reached a level of development while we are still striving for it. And we have recently got independence, so not many precedences are developed, which means फिर से दिमाग लगा के solution ढूंढो. Every time put your mind to finding solutions. So because of it, because of the nature of job that you are aspiring to do, it requires a development of this critical facility. And how PSIR is uniquely suited to building this skill. Because the discipline actually is inherently analytical. As I was giving you that example, and from अगर हम evolution of state पढ़ें, so you will start from the feudal society, and maybe from the ancient times, the Greek city-states हुआ, and फिर feudal society, फिर you have this Treaty of Westphalia, फिर modern nation states emerged, फिर modern nation state में भी कहीं किसी ने capitalism शुरू हुआ, फिर उसकी दिक्कतें आई तो communism, then you have welfare state, capitalism adopting, then neoliberalism. So what? It is inherently, there is, when you study this evolution, you understand there is an inherently analytical subject here. And I'll give you many examples. The political theory trains you to interrogate concepts like justice, like liberty, like equality, and not memorize the definitions. जब अभी हम देखेंगे, अभी syllabus भी देखेंगे, तो in our syllabus, section A of paper 1, we study topics like, you have topics like concept of power, you have justice, equality, and democracy. So basically हम यही, what is the preamble क्या कह रही है? We the people of India, having solemnly pledged, है ना, to constitute India into a sovereign, secular, socialist, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, and liberty, equality, and fraternity. तो यही मुझे इसी से मैं ethics लिखूंगी. Ethics का पूरा पेपर कैसे solve करना है? Bring in justice, bring in these values of liberty, equality, democracy, dissent. वही मैं PSIR में पढ़ना है. उसी से मैं essay लिखूंगी. And in my essay, abstract essay, I am going to talk about justice, I am going to talk about democracy. Democracy is not just procedural democracy. Democracy is a socio-economic system. And so you find that all these ideas that I am going to study, I am going to be using across my papers. So it trains you to, and when we study, for example, equality, there is no one idea of equality. What do you mean by equality, if I ask you? What do you mean by equality? Yes. Anybody else? And he is saying equal access to opportunity with respect to talent. Equality of opportunity he is talking about. But is that all? Equality of outcome. Everyone should grow at similar pace or maybe at the same pace. And equality of opportunity to de diya. But what about the disadvantaged section, SC, ST population, historically disadvantaged? So what about them? Equality of opportunities. Everybody can compete in civil services examination with no reservation. Newly independent India, will they be able to? Do they actually have equality of opportunity? In reality, no. And there is a difference. Supposedly my parents, I come from a very privileged family, and my parents are doctors, and one is a cardiologist, another is a nephrologist. Yes, I have a better chance at becoming a doctor, don't I? Because I have that environment, I see, I'm more aware, I'm meeting similar people, maybe I'm motivated, I have greater access to all such things. But if supposedly I were from a Dalit community, where even है ना. I live in the outskirts of a village, not even proper electricity, education. I have not received very good education. I go to government school, I have to travel 5 kilometers. But I can also sit for, my privileged self can sit for the NEET exam. And that Dalit girl can also sit for the NEET exam. Is that equality of opportunity? No, that is not equality of opportunity. Literal sense में है, तो equality of opportunity एक part है. फिर हमें affirmative policies भी देनी है. फिर एक और idea है equality में, जो अमर्त्य सेन and मार्था नॉसबॉम have given, है ना, equality of capability. They say even equality of opportunity plus affirmative action is also not sufficient. Supposedly, I am, है ना, this two selves. One is the privileged self and one is this Dalit girl from a village. ठीक है, अब गवर्नमेंट ने क्या, दोनों नीट एग्जाम दे सकते हो, तो इक्वालिटी ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी हो गया. फिर गवर्नमेंट ने कहा अच्छा ये एक इतना प्रिविलेज्ड है, दूसरा इतना, है ना, सेग्रीगेटेड एंड अनप्रिविलेज्ड है, तो इसको एफर्मेटिव एक्शन दे दिया. ठीक है, तुम हाईली रिजर्वेशन कर दिया 5%. Yes, so at a lower cutoff you will clear this exam. But then she has no education facility. She does not have 11th, 12th in her village. Where does she go to study? And there is no coaching facility or no teaching facility that she can avail. Her parents are illiterate. They cannot help her read any book. Yes, there is no current. So now what has happened? Despite the reservation policy, she does not have the capability. She could never develop that capability which is required to clear this exam. She has never in her life sat for a mock MCQ type question इसने कभी solve ही नहीं किए, है ना. तो you have to eventually, equality का मतलब क्या है, इसको भी same capability पे लेकर आओ, इसको, है ना, इसको तुम equality of opportunity दो, एक नज दो reservation, फिर ultimately इसको क्या, इसको वो capable बनाओ. She should have also appeared. If I have appeared for 10 marks, she should also be capable of appearing for 10 marks. And she should also have access to my laptop, computer, internet, AI, whatever. And so when you give to equality का भी, you understand those nuances. तो वही है कि एक idea नहीं है. If I say liberty, you tell me what is liberty. What is freedom? हाँ, एक है freedom to take decision. देखो, liberty के भी 3 concepts हैं. एक है absence of restraint. यहाँ से शुरू होता है liberty. इसका मतलब क्या है? You are free. When you are free, when there is no restraint placed on you. You are free. You can walk into the classroom at any time. You can walk out. But if there was a watchman who will open the door only at 7:15 in the morning and close it shut at 7:30 in the morning, तो फिर वो liberty हट गई, restraint आ गया. तो liberty क्या है? Absence of restraint. फिर दूसरा एक concept आता है that liberty is not simply absence of restraint. क्योंकि तुम्हारे पास, है ना, liberty is when state plays, है ना, a proactive role. Supposedly there is absence of restraint. कोई भी guard नहीं बनाया है. Anybody and everybody is free कि जिसको जो करना है कर लो, है ना. लेकिन अब 2 बच्चों का मन है कि हम पढ़ाई करें, लेकिन there is no school in the village. So as such no restraint. But then there is no school only in the village. So you are not able to, है ना, do what you want. You wanted to study. You wanted to go and eat an ice cream from this one, है ना, immediately go and eat an ice cream. But there is no ice cream shop only. Yes, so then the government has to play that role as the enabler, where it will develop these capabilities. है ना, school बनाया, है ना, तो government plays a positive role. पहला क्या, absence of restraint. वहाँ पे government is going to restrain. गवर्नमेंट कोई लॉ नहीं बनाएगी, कोई रेस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं डालेगी. दूसरे में क्या है, गवर्नमेंट हैज टू प्ले एन एक्टिव रोल, बिल्ड द स्कूल, बिल्ड द हेल्थ सेंटर, देन ओनली यू विल बी एबल टू एंजॉय योर लिबर्टी. फिर आते हैं मार्क्स, फिर ये बोलते हैं ये लिबर्टी तो झूठी है, ये लिबर्टी लिबर्टी ही नहीं है, क्योंकि आप क्या कर रहे हो, यू आर कॉन्स्टेंटली इन द कैपिटलिस्ट वर्ल्ड, यू आर कॉन्स्टेंटली, यू हैव टू वर्क, तुम्हारे पास कहने को लिबर्टी है, लेकिन असल में क्या, यू हैव टू वर्क टू मीट योर फूड रिक्वायरमेंट, योर clothing requirement and the housing requirement. So for your minimum basic needs. So in the capitalist society, state was minimum. State is only going to provide security and law and order, no other function. So you can do whatever one pleases. Yes, but in fact what happened, the worker has to constantly work to meet his basic needs. In reality he is not free, he has no leisure time to pursue. Yes, है ना, तो this is not freedom. When will you genuinely be free? When your basic needs are met by the community. है ना, in a society where everyone is equal, you will enjoy freedom. When everyone's needs are met, you will enjoy freedom. समझ में आ रहा है? तो you find कि है ना, there is no one definition. And isn't each definition correct? When I am saying liberty is absence of restraint, this is the definition of liberty. But absence of restraint does not really allow me to exercise my choice. State has to play enabling role. Okay, that is correct. But then what if I have, the state has played the enabling role, absence of restraint, but actually I am busy in meeting the bare necessities of life. I have no leisure time to go and eat that ice cream, and to go to the hospital also. So then I will be free only when my basic needs are met. And when the state, will the state meet only my basic need and not yours? Or yours and not mine? ऐसा नहीं होगा. फिर community सबकी needs meet करेगी. तो सब equal हो गए और सब free हो गए. तो that is freedom, they say. You understand? Fine. So each of these ideas, therefore, justice, Aristotle had said, what is justice? To treat equals equally and unequals unequally. To treat unequals equally is injustice. ठीक है, लेकिन वो प्रोपोर्शनल जस्टिस की बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन सिर्फ क्या वही जस्टिस है? फिर अमर्त्य सेन ने कहा कि टू डिफाइन जस्टिस इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट. What is easy to define is unjust. So you can recognize when there is injustice. So rest, the opposite will be justice. है ना? तो इस तरह से these definitions, है ना, ये हमें हमारा दिमाग खोल देती है, हमारी सोच को बढ़ा देती है. Yes, then IR forces you to evaluate competing frameworks. Realism versus liberalism. International politics के लिए ये theories है ना. तो रियलिस्ट स्कूल ऑफ थॉट क्या बोलेगा? नेशन स्टेट्स, है ना, विल ऑलवेज ट्राई एंड परस्यू देयर नेशनल इंटरेस्ट, एंड इन परस्यूट ऑफ नेशनल इंटरेस्ट देयर विल ऑलवेज बी कन्फ्लिक्ट. व्हाट वी आर सीइंग प्रेजेंटली, है ना, देयर आर मल्टीपल वॉर्स गोइंग ऑन. रशिया वर्सेस यूक्रेन, यूएस वर्सेस ईरान, है ना, इजराइल वर्सेस हेजबोल्ला. यस, है ना, देर इज ऑल्सो ट्रेड वॉर, करेंसी वॉर, टेरिफ वॉर, सब चल रहा है ना. तो इसका मतलब क्या है? ये रियलिस्ट डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ द वर्ल्ड है. वो कहते हैं यही है दुनिया, इंटरनेशनल पॉलिटिक्स इज लाइक दिस ओनली. बट लिबरल से व्हाट यू आर सेइंग इज करेक्ट, बट वी कैन फाइंड अ सोल्यूशन. इट नीड नॉट ऑलवेज बी दिस वे ओनली. सो लिबरल ट्राई टू क्रिएट अ रूल्स बेस्ड वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर, और हर देश उस रूल को मानेगा. तो उन्होंने क्रिएट किया UN, WTO, IMF, वर्ल्ड बैंक. तो बिफोर वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 और अंटिल वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 वी वर विटनेसिंग रियलिस्ट वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर, क्योंकि वॉर्स चल रहे थे. फिर वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 से अब तक, है ना, अंटिल से द ग्लोबल फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस ऑफ 2007-8 या अंटिल 2012-2013 वी विटनेस द लिबरल रूल्स बेस्ड ऑर्डर वाज प्रिवेलिंग. बट टुडे व्हाट हैज हैपेंड? And if you are reading your newspapers, you will be reading that the liberal rules-based order has collapsed. Relevance of UN is questioned. WTO is non-functional. Yes, and what we are seeing, once again, the realist paradigm of international relations has come to dominate. Yes, fine. National interest versus global common. So what should you prioritize? National interest, global common. National interest is development of these highways and the big industries, but global common is the environment. Should I work to protect the climate? Should I cut the forest in the name of development, or protect the forest so as to act as these pumps of carbon dioxide or the greenhouse gases? They take in those gases for the sake of global common, that is the environment. So we study such debates. And comparative politics, where you will look from, you will not just describe the various systems, you compare and contrast the various systems that we study. Also, I've got a few examples there. Yes, equality. So one is, जो simple हम समझते हैं equality. मेरे पास 10 रुपए, तुम्हारे पास 10 रुपए, उसके पास 10, उसके पास 10. It is what? Equality of outcome. This is equality. Haven't we understood since our childhood equality as this? I have 10 rupees, you have 10, all 4 of us have 10 rupees. It is equal. There is equality in the class. Yes, that is equality of outcome. Equality of opportunity. So basically, what was it? So the socialists or the communist, मैंने बताया कार्ल मार्क्स ने क्या कहा? The community is going to meet your basic needs. Community is going to meet my basic need, yours, his. हम सबका community ने basic needs meet कर दिया, तो we are all equal. ऐसा नहीं है कि मैं अपना I am able to eat 2 chapatis, you are able to eat 5 chapatis. I have only 1 pair of clothes, you have 10 pair of clothes. तब हम unequal है, लेकिन अब हम सबके पास there are 2 pairs of clothes. With each, we each get 3 chapatis each. That is equality of outcome. Yes, so that is equality. That is how we have understood or equality always. So the socialist said this is equality, and the liberal, the capitalist state, you are highly unequal. You create inequality. There is capitalist who is so rich and the worker who is so poor. So the capitalist said, no. What we provide is equality of opportunity. We say you can become, a worker can become a capitalist if he has the merit, if he has the mental ability. US क्या बोलता है? I am a land of opportunity. Based on the merit, you will grow. And I give equality of opportunity to all to flourish. Now, depending on the merit, different people will flourish at different rates. So they say, no, we are equal. I am providing equality. So this is liberals' view. और लिबरल्स में भी बहुत डिफरेंट स्कूल्स हैं. तो ये क्लासिकल लिबरल्स का व्यू है जो कैपिटलिज्म को डिफेंड कर रहे हैं. इक्वालिटी ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी है. यू कुड हैव बिकम अ कैपिटलिस्ट इफ यू हैड दैट, है ना, दैट मनी शार्पनेस. you chose, है ना, you did not have that sharpness, so you are a worker. So what do I do? Then came this idea, as I was telling you, है ना, if supposedly somebody is very, very underprivileged, historically underprivileged. So there is this person who is a handicapped person. है ना, तो equality of opportunity तो दे दिया. But what about people who are handicapped? So in fact, if I can just get into little political science here, there is a thinker, Ronald Dworkin. So he describes an imaginary world. He says that there are these 100 people who get onto the ship and they go into the sea, deep into the sea. And then while they are on their way in the ship and in the sea, they lose their way. And they reach a stranded island. And now they have reached that island, they have nowhere else to go. So they decide, fine, we will start life here. Let us establish a society and start living here. So fine, they will start living. So how do they start living? So it is decided, and whatever resources are available on the island, so it will be equally distributed amongst all. So that is how we will start the life. So he says, and the resources, he talks of the resources in terms of clamp shells. है ना, वहाँ पे अब रुपए तो नहीं है, तो उन्होंने जो सी से जो शेल्स है उसी को इकट्ठा कर लिया और डिसाइड किया whosoever these 150 people each will get 100 shells, 10 shells, each will get 10 shells, and so each has equal value, and depending on how you want to use, you use and you grow in life. But then he said, what about those who were few people who had certain natural underprivileges, such as handicapped individual. So to account for those handicapped individuals, they were given 5 extra clamshells. है ना, तो which we see, समझ में आ रहा है ना, जो मैंने बताया हिस्टोरिकली ST/SC, तो जो आज की दुनिया में उसको हम कैसे देखते हैं, एफर्मेटिव पॉलिसीज, है ना. सो वन प्रिविलेज्ड गर्ल कैन अपीयर फॉर नीट, एंड दैट दलित गर्ल, है ना, वेयर नो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, नो स्कूल्स, सो शी हैज बीन प्रोवाइडेड अ रिजर्वेशन कि तुम्हें थोड़े कम मार्क्स भी आओगे तो भी क्लियर कर जाओगे नीट का एग्जाम. सो दैट इज, है ना, सो दिस इज द कंसेप्ट ऑफ इक्वालिटी ऑफ रिसोर्सेज. बट देन केम सोशल लिबरल्स. सोशल लिबरल्स क्या है, ये है ना, दे आर लाइक अ मिक्स ऑफ सोशलिस्ट एंड लिबरल्स. ठीक है, लेकिन टिल्ट लिबर्टी को अभी भी एम्फसाइज करेंगे. सोशल लिबरल्स कौन हुए, अमर्त्य सेन या मार्था नॉसबॉम. सो अब ये बताएंगे कि, है ना, दिस इज नॉट सफिशिएंट, जस्ट प्रोवाइडिंग दैट एक्स्ट्रा 5 clamshell would not be sufficient. That person does not have hand only. So how is he going to build the house that everyone wants to build? Yes, so you have to enable them to develop that capability. Maybe if you do not have hand, how to use your legs to build that house? Yes, so you have to actually, equality will be when all have equal capability. And how will the state ensure all have equal capability? When the state invests in health and education. ठीक है, तो equality also you see how, है ना, तो we will go for a little more detailed study of course when we are taking it as an optional. Right now कि I am teaching as if you have no background of PSIR, so that everybody can understand these ideas. Yes, so the point is, this is how you develop analysis, this is how you develop a little in-depth knowledge. Fine. Fine. Do you, it is going to be a short session anyways. Do you really want a break? Half an hour we'll finish the session. Do you want a break? Fine, let's take then 2 minutes a break we'll take and we'll continue. that is one thing, not necessarily always. है ना? Population control cannot be the solution every time. Yes, but if वहाँ पे भी you have to strike that balance. Do not go for one child policy that you have aging population 30 years down the line. Now you have to be near the fertility rates. Fine, anyways. Then you have this concept of rights. है ना? So once again, rights. है ना? How do you define rights? Or what are rights? It is not power, but it is the freedom, your and right involve obligation on the society. You will have right only when the society is obliged to provide you that right, to enable you to exercise that right. Anyways, so when we study rights, we will study, one of the discussion is human rights. We understand human rights is, we all support human rights. Yes, so human rights का definition क्या है? Universal, irrespective. How do you define human rights? Irrespective of state, irrespective of caste, class, gender, nation, religion, all of us, just by the virtue of being human beings, have certain inalienable set of rights. Yes, those are human rights. Human rights, feature क्या है? Universal, irrespective of all these differences, everybody will have. They inalienable. You cannot take away these rights from the people because state is not giving that right. Nature has given that right just by the virtue of us being human beings. And for us to express our fullest personality, we require these human rights. So they are inalienable. They are interdependent. So it is not that I will give you right to food, but I will not give you right to environment. And so they are interdependent and indivisibility. That very same idea. It is not that one set of human rights I am giving, and civil political rights I am giving, socio-economic rights I will not give. Cultural rights I will give, but another set of rights I will not give. So that cannot be. They are not indivisible. They are indivisible, they are interdependent, inalienable and universal. Fine. But then we are all appreciative of human rights, and when we study human rights, we will study it in so much detail and all that. And then we come across this idea that in fact the multicultural perspective is against the idea of human rights. Yes, and a multicultural perspective kya hai? It sees this concept of human rights as an ulterior way, a subdued way of bringing in Western view of ideas, Western cultural imposition on non-Western societies. We have our Asian values for that matter. The tribals have their own view of what is right, what is wrong. Each society has its own definition of right, and we need not always be obliged to follow the liberal notion of rights only. Yes, so they are against universalistic definition of rights, see it as a subtle way to establish Western hegemony. Each society has its own notion of rights. But then the multicultural perspective is once again contradicted by the feminists. They say no, we cannot have multicultural rights. Yes, why? Because every culture accords a subordinate status to women. Each culture actually is exploitative of women, so we have to, so basically none of the system is completely 100% correct. There are pros and cons, so you have to go for a reasoned solution, you have to go for a reasoned argument. Similarly, when you look at this idea of democracy, generally when we talk about democracy, we talk about free and fair elections. But that is just procedural democracy. Democracy is much deeper. What it is a deliberative democracy. Even in political sense, socio-economic में तो गए नहीं अभी तक. Political sense में procedural पे ही हम रुक जाते हैं. But democracy is what? It is deliberative. Democracy is not rule of a majority. Rather, it should represent force of a better argument. Deliberative democracy का मतलब क्या है? In a democracy, you should deliberate, discuss, debate, disagree with each other. Yes, and then based on the power of the argument, you have to agree. If what you believe, you have said your point of view, but somebody else has a better argument, we should listen to that person and abide by that argument. That is deliberative democracy. Yes, it is idea of consensual democracy. You arrive at consensus through such a deliberation. It in fact highlights the importance of civic participation, that we should actively engage in civic affairs. And in fact, we will study later on, there are scholars like Hannah Arendt who says that this in fact is real freedom or real liberty. So liberty is not simply absence of restraint. Liberty is when you actively participate in governance, in civic affairs. That is liberty. Otherwise, there will always be a boss, a government over your head. Yes. So there is this debate, democracy versus development. Yes, so that is also a debate that we study in detail. You will have scholars like Amartya Sen, who will argue that democracy itself is a good. Democracy should not be simply seen as a means. It is a good in itself. And it is a very important good. And development should not be gauged only in terms of GDP growth. Yes, development is also you having the right to decide for yourself. In China, for example, the state has one-child policy. So they impose their view in the most private sphere of one's life. Yes, that is that true development? If I cannot express my views, and the government should not be sovereign. We the people are sovereign. Yes, the state we have created, the government, you become future civil servants. You are there to serve. State was created by man, not the other way around. State did not create man. Man created the state to serve man. Yes, so that is that whole debate. Then thinkers as thinking tools that we use. And you study Marx. So Marx may you study, you understand. For example, there was a question one year in essay, can capitalism lead to inclusive growth? This was a question in 2015, I guess. So the answer could be very well got. And one very good aspect of discussion was this Karl Marx's view and this entire capitalism, but the problems, then communism, then welfare state, then neoliberalism, this evolution itself, theses, antitheses and synthesis ke through. ठीक है, Ambedkar's views once again, help us understand the society better. His slogan, educate, agitate and organize. Yes, was the clarion call given to the Dalits. So they help you think. Education बहुत essential है. Without education, education helps you to gain awareness. Without awareness, you cannot agitate. And to effectively agitate, you need to organize. Rawls is a thinker who talks about justice. So we will understand justice when we discuss in detail Rawls. Then Rawls is criticized by communitarian. He is a social liberal like Amartya Sen. So he will come out with a very nice theory of justice, but he is criticized, then he changes few of his views. Yes, Kautilya, the Indian thinker who has really influenced India's geopolitics. BJP as a political party generally is quite influenced by Kautilya's viewpoint. He has given theories like Mandal Siddhant. Immediate neighbors are natural enemies and neighbor are natural friends. This explains the relation between India, Pakistan, natural enemies sort of a relation, and India, Afghanistan, very good ties. Yes, and you internalize how to question premises. When you study all these thinkers, your deepen ho jata hai view. So you start questioning premises, trace implication, and spot contradictions. Current affair, when we study it in PSIR, it becomes like a case study. For example, yes, it is not simply additions. For example, as I was telling you, the current development of US stopping appointment to the appellate panels in WTO. ये current affair है. 2019 का current affair है, लेकिन आज तक यही चल रहा है. They are not allowing appointments to happen in this ट्रिब्यूनल इन WTO. तो उसके वजह से वहाँ से हम वो ट्रेंड ट्रेस करते करते now we have started talking about that this decline of the rules based liberal world order. A diplomatic standoff isn't news, it is IR theory in application. As I was telling you, the recent wars say that we have once again entered into the realist era of international politics, or the realist paradigm explains the international politics better. A Supreme Court judgment isn't trivia, it is a constitutional interpretation. Keshwananda Bharti case, है doctrine of basic structure, governor of Tamil Nadu versus state of Tamil Nadu. Yes, all these are basically, they are not simply judgments, they are not one-off issues, but they are constitutional interpretation in action. And PSIR teaches you to see patterns and not just events. We start recognizing patterns. For example, as I was telling you, that 1990s, strengthening of the state हुआ, ठीक है, 1990 में let me tell you, strengthening of the state हुआ versus the center. Now, why did it happen? There are multiple reasons. And there was this trend towards coalition politics. There is LPG reforms. All this helped to strengthen the state. Yes, so other factors also, but then जो हमने पढ़ा है उसमें से. So the overall payoff क्या है? Once you develop this ability of critical analysis, deeper thinking, and you learn to transfer it or apply it for GS paper 1, 2, 3, 4 and your essay paper. Also, one very important payoff of this, that the subject is critically analytical subject, is the fact that this subject is very, very interesting. You will, I might sound biased towards my subject, but the fact of the matter is, not many subjects offer you such interests. है ना? कोई subjects होंगे जिसमें ज़्यादा description है. But here, since we delve into this, the thesis, antithesis, synthesis paradigm, this is how this subject progresses. So you find that it becomes quite interesting, quite relevant from the current perspective. And when it comes to preparing for PSIR or for your UPSC, you are not going to study this subject for 1 year or 2 years. Yes, you will continue with the subject until you clear the exam. So first attempt when you write, you have already spent almost 2 years with the paper. 1 year in preparation, 1 year in writing that exam. फिर first attempt में नहीं होता है, second attempt, third attempt. So you need to have a subject with which is interesting, which you would not mind reading and rereading every year, है ना? Because otherwise, if it becomes boring, it becomes difficult. And of course, I am not talking about the overlap here. Maybe briefly I'll touch upon as far as the major overlap that we see across our papers, and across PSIR, GS paper 1, 2, 3, ethics and essay. But before that, let us see this once again a question. Critically examine the view that India's foreign policy is increasingly driven by economic interest over strategic consideration. This was also one of the previous year questions. Critically examine the view that India's foreign policy is increasingly driven by economic interests over strategic consideration. So question क्या है? Critically examine. Yes, and the view that India's foreign policy is increasingly driven by economic interests over strategic consideration. What do we mean here? Yes, है ना? ये सवाल देखो क्या बोल रहा है? India's foreign policy is increasingly driven by economic interest, then say strategic consideration. है ना? This is the statement, but उससे पहले क्या है? Critically examine. Critically examine का मतलब क्या होता है? Pros and cons दोनों देंगे. Argue for, argue against. Yes, है ना? Argue against. And but you will lean more towards against. ठीक है? तो you will write an answer saying that you will not refute the examiner altogether. You will say yes. We see an increasing trend towards the economic orientation of India's foreign policy. But that does not mean that the strategic importance has been overlooked. We will give example, how do we see this economic inclination, why we see economic inclination, but then we'll say that this does not mean that we are prioritizing economic interests over strategic considerations. Strategic considerations continue to be important. Yes, and then we can go ahead and say, in fact, what has happened, economic interests have become strategic in the present world order. क्या हो रहा है? And a retaliatory tariff getting imposed, and a disruption of energy supply lines, disruption of supply chains over critical minerals. They are becoming strategic tools of leverage in foreign policy. Yes, they are becoming strategic interests of countries. So I've just discussed how would you go about. So India's foreign policy in the post-Cold War era. Why? Because we undertook LPG reforms and is more driven by the economic considerations. We focus on trade expansion through Look East policy, energy security, engaging with West Asia, technology partnership and investment flows. And it is a consequence of economic globalization and adoption of LPG reforms. Yes, however, despite growing economic motivation, strategic concerns continue to dominate. For example, border security continues to be important. Strategic autonomy continues to be important. We have not sided with any side in the ongoing conflicts. We try and maintain our strategic autonomy. Yes, in fact, what has happened? Safeguarding economic interest has itself become strategic. So that we are discussing. And for example, in Iran, US war also. US was a militarily much stronger country than Iran. But Iran could use its economic leverage of blocking the Strait of Hormuz to put pressure on US. So economics is no longer pure economics, it has become strategic. And finally conclude, pointing out that India's foreign policy is undoubtedly more economically oriented than in earlier decades, reflecting the imperatives of globalization and development. However, it is inaccurate to suggest that economic interests have replaced strategic consideration. Rather, we see a synthesis of both these interests shaping India's foreign policy. Apart from all the critical analysis that we have highlighted, it is PSIR at the end of the day is also a very high scoring optional. It is one optional which has consistently performed very well. PSIR consistently maintains a success rate of 8 to 9.5%, which is very high. Yes, which is high for a subject with such large number of aspirants appearing for it. Yes, so you can see the success rate in 2024, 2022, 2021 and until 2019. And number of times students have scored even more than 300 marks. You have Shakti Dubey, and 2024 mein she scored 313. 2022 mein Ishita Kishore, you have Tina Dabi, Shubham Kumar in 2020. They've scored more than 300 marks. Yes, and multiple students in 2021 above 285, which is huge marks. Kyunki look in terms of percentage, 55 to 60% marks आ रहे हैं, जो GS में 40 to 50% marks आते हैं. Yes, now coming to the syllabus. Paper 1 syllabus is political theory, theories of state, then these ideas, justice, equality, rights, democracy. और just ये topic का relevance कहाँ है? See, generally we can start anyhow, but generally the tendency is to start with Western political thought. ठीक है, या तो आप generally Western political thought से शुरू करेंगे. Once you are done with Western political thought, you get into political ideologies. Yes, along with political ideologies, liberalism, socialism, communism. उसके बाद आप theories of state पढ़ते हो उन्हीं के साथ, कि liberal theory of state क्या है, communist theory of state क्या है. That you study, and then you can study all these concepts. Concept of power maybe first you study, then according to your choice. है ना, कहीं से भी राइट्स, इक्वालिटी, जस्टिस, डेमोक्रेसी कर सकते हैं. यस, फिर वेस्ट इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट is a separate topic, but we feel that its importance is on rise. So Indian political thought should be covered well. Yes, और फिर ये टॉपिक है पॉलिटिकल थियरी. या तो हम इससे भी शुरू कर सकते हैं, पॉलिटिकल थियरी से भी, क्योंकि जनरल आइडियाज़ हैं व्हाट इज़ पॉलिटिकल थियरी, है ना, ऑल सच आइडियाज़. तो इससे या तो हम इससे शुरू कर सकते हैं या हम लास्ट में इसको पढ़ सकते हैं, पॉलिटिकल थियरी. इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट एंड पॉलिटिकल थियरी कैन बी टेकन अप इंडिविजुअली, बट जनरल इज वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट पढ़ो, उसके बाद पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजीज के साथ थियरीज ऑफ स्टेट, एंड देन डू कंसेप्ट ऑफ पावर फर्स्ट. यस, बिकॉज पावर इज सेंट्रल टू पॉलिटिक्स, पावर इज सेंट्रल टू पॉलिटिकल साइंस. So concept of power, then as you choose. So one might choose rights, equality, justice, democracy. Yes, and you have Indian political thought and political theory then. So anyways, my point was जो ये topics है justice, equality, rights and democracy. In fact, these topics have overlap with your essay, with your ethics and with your interview in general. Helps you develop a sort of a thinking, and which will enable you to answer questions well. So a case study, if you become a future administrator, which is the 5 priorities or 5 areas that you will prioritize. So it has to include education and health, because that is equality of capability. Until and unless you develop capability of the people, they cannot enjoy liberty. है ना, तो उस तरह की चीज़ है. Fine. So you find a very good overlap with ethics also. Ethics में क्या है? You have to show you are an ethical person. How do you show? You're a person who is sensitive towards justice, equality, liberty, democracy, all such ideas. Fine. फिर Western political thought, Indian political thought. Once again, very, very relevant for ethics and for essay. In fact, one of the years I'll just show you direct सवाल ही ऐसे में, हाँ, थिंकर से. अभी मेरे दिमाग से बिल्कुल हेगल का आइडिया है, रियल इज रैशनल, रैशनल इज रियल. वो सीधा वही कोट ही दे दिया. और अदरवाइज ऑल्सो अगर सेम कोट नहीं दे रहे थिंकर का, बट अराउंड यूजिंग देयर आइडियाज वी कैन राइट नाइस एसेज, है ना. एंड एथिक्स में भी आप थिंकर्स ही पढ़ रहे हो तो ना, सेक्शन ए में केस स्टडी के अलावा आप सेक्शन ए में थिंकर्स के व्यूज़ ही पढ़ते हो, तो वो सारे थिंकर्स हम यहाँ कहीं ना कहीं पढ़ लेते हैं. ठीक है, तो दैट बिकम्स क्वाइट रेलेवेंट. फाइन. सो जनरली हम सोचते हैं कि सेक्शन बी हैज़ ओवरलैप विथ जीएस पेपर 2, बट इट इज़ नॉट. पूरा पेपर हैज़ अ लॉट ऑफ ओवरलैप. नाउ दिस पेपर इज आईजीपी Indian nationalism, so modern Indian history somewhere a little. Yes, so political strategies of India's freedom struggle, perspectives on Indian national movement. तो यहाँ पे हम theory लाते हैं, Marxist, liberal, nationalist perspective. Making of the Indian constitution. Yes, once again, good overlap with your polity. Salient features of Indian constitution, preamble, fundamental rights, DPSP, fundamental duties we study. And the executive, judiciary and legislature, the principal organs. Grassroots democracy, overlap with polity. Statutory institutions and commissions, overlap with polity. Federalism, center-state relation, changing nature of center-state relation, governors issue of article 356, precedence rule वगैरह पढ़ते हैं. फिर planning and economic development, green revolution, Gandhian view of development, Nehruvian way of development. Yes, centralized planning, NITI Aayog, planning commission, all that we'll study here. Then caste, religion and ethnicity in Indian politics. Then party system, yes, and finally social movements. So social movements में women movement in India, उस पर सीधा एक GS में सवाल आ रखा है पेपर, GS पेपर 1 में. Women's role during the Gandhian phase of Indian independence struggle. तो वो सोशल मूवमेंट में हम डिटेल में पढ़ते हैं. ठीक है, तो एनवायरमेंटल मूवमेंट, ह्यूमन राइट्स मूवमेंट इन इंडिया एंड विमेन मूवमेंट इन इंडिया. कैसे भी पढ़ सकते हैं. अभी एक बार ऑर्डर नहीं डिस्कस करते, बिकॉज वी ऑल्सो आर रनिंग ऑन अ टाइम क्रंच, है ना. एक बार सेशन खत्म करके मे बी वी कैन डिस्कस द ऑर्डर, बट इसको हम कैसे भी पढ़ सकते हैं. वी कैन स्टार्ट विथ salient features and we can go ahead, or else you can start with topics like social movement. That is what I do. I start with social movement, then salient features, and then we go down these topics. Fine. Paper 2, section A. So paper 2, section A, once again it is theory of international politics. So you have some comparative politics, state in comparative perspective. So changing nature of state in capitalist and socialist economies, advanced industrial and developing societies, politics of representation, political parties, what is pressure group, social movements, है ना, ये सब. Yeah, I think so also has overlap somewhere with GS. Then globalization. Then you have the various theories, approaches to study of international relations, the idealist, realist, Marxist, functionalist and systems theory. Then key concepts such as national interest, collective security, balance of power, है ना, ये सारे हम पढ़ते हैं, collective defense. Then changing international political order. We start from Cold War. 1945 के बाद how has the world order changed? Bipolar था during Cold War. Then with the disintegration of USSR and fall of communism in Eastern Europe, unipolar world, है ना. फिर unipolar US का decline शुरू होता है by 9/11 2001, and उसके बाद recently we were witnessing, we used to call it loose bipolarity, but probably it is no longer loose bipolar. We witness multipolarity on rise. Then evolution of international economic system, once again from 1945, IMF, World Bank, GATT, then WTO, and present situation under WTO. Also the various conferences of WTO. Fine, United Nations. Then regionalization of world politics, EU, ASEAN, APEC, SAARC and NAFTA, and contemporary global concerns. So topics like democracy, what is happening with democracy, human rights, environment. So environment में east-west debate. Yes, for nuclear proliferation, terrorism, gender, justice. All this continue to be relevant across your GS papers and essay. And finally, India and the world, which is international relations. Yes. So you can go through the syllabus and you will find, and across, if I can tell you, GS paper 1 में क्या overlap है? Modern Indian history, post-independent history, है ना? उसके साथ overlap है society, थोड़ा सा caste, है ना? Religion, women, ये सब हम feminism वगैरह हम पढ़ते हैं, है ना. तो ये सोशलिज्म, कम्युनिज्म वगैरह हम पढ़ लेते हैं. तो ये GS पेपर 1 का ही ओवरलैप है. GS 2 आई नीड नॉट से, पॉलिटी, गवर्नेंस, IR सब में ओवरलैप है. फिर GS पेपर 3 इकोनॉमिक्स में WTO वगैरह हम डिटेल में पढ़ते हैं, तो वो उसमें काफ़ी अच्छा ओवरलैप आता है. IMF, वर्ल्ड बैंक, WTO, दिस पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ डेवलपमेंट वगैरह हम पढ़ते हैं, नॉर्थ साउथ डिबेट, ऑल दैट वी स्टडी. फाइन. एंड GS पेपर 4 सेक्शन A कंप्लीट ओवरलैप, not little, complete overlap in section A at least. And section A helps you do case studies also, eventually you practice that. So section A में काफ़ी overlap. Then essay with abstract topics more so. Yes, if we can see few examples here. Yes. Yes, this was 2025's essay. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. है ना, ये है concept. ये essay I had taken up for discussion as part of जो previous year questions discuss करते हैं जब paper आता है. So you can bring in concepts like hegemony, है ना, you develop hegemony. You have, there is a thinker called Gramsci, है ना, जो हम पढ़ते हैं, proper thinker पढ़ते हैं, तो उसमें he talks about this war of position. ठीक है, actual fighting is war of maneuver. You go out and fight, and then there is, without fighting directly, you try propaganda. है ना, cold war क्या है ना, without actually fighting, you fight through propaganda, है ना, you ideological fights, है ना. So the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. So you talk about all these concepts you use to and discuss. It is not always beneficial to fight because war has no victors. So it is always beneficial to subdue the enemy without actually fighting. Fighting is direct war. तो वहाँ पे आप preemptive strikes भी ला सकते हो, है ना? Before the enemy can strike you, if you strike, but towards the end. But concepts like propaganda, hegemonic, है ना, control, इस तरह के जो ideas है, war of position, है ना, तो that we can use to write. Thought finds a world and creates one also. तो यहाँ पे भी also you can bring in these thinkers and talk about how, and generally it is believed that what you think, that is the kind of world you see or create for yourself, and the thought, है ना, so you find a world and create one also. But यहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा PSIR use हो सकता है. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy. Yes. A society that has more justice is a society that needs less charity. So using the concept of justice, which we study in detail, great detail, है ना, यहाँ पे हम उसके use करके लिख सकते हैं. Yes, hands that rock with the cradle rules the world. अच्छा, real is rational, rational is real. This is exact thought of Hegel. Of course, हमें Hegel का view यहाँ पे नहीं लिखना है, हम ऐसे लिखेंगे. But to actually understand this idea, फिर हम लिख सकते हैं, है ना? फिर कार्ल मार्क्स इस view को critique करता है ना? तो you find a lot of view around this idea. So if you understand, the point is, if we do not need to write a political science answer in these essays, but if we are able to understand the nuances, so we will be able to write a layman essay in much better way. We are able to open up the topic in a much better way. Yes, patriarchy is least noticed yet the most significant of social inequality. वापस से feminism पढ़ते हैं बहुत detail में, तो वहाँ पे we study this idea. Yes, there is no social justice without economic prosperity. So once again, justice, liberty का play है ये. Development versus democracy का play है. So all those debates that we study, we will bring in here. Yes, अच्छा, GS paper 1 के I have written down, got few questions here. I think so this was 2016. Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, despite having divergent approaches and strategies, had common goal of amelioration of downtrodden. So हम गांधी जी को भी detail में भी पढ़ते हैं और B.R. Ambedkar के views भी पढ़ते हैं. So if we have studied it as part of our optional, we can use that to write GS answers. Yes, how different would have been achievement of Indian independence without Mahatma Gandhi? Mahatma Gandhi to in great detail we will be studying. Yes, it has been difficult for the, once again, making of the constitution wale topic may we cover these kind of heads. Fine. Role of women in the freedom struggle, especially during the Gandhian phase. We discuss it as part of social movements. That the topic, the 11th topic in IGP section. Fine. So with all this, I would like to conclude our session. The point we were trying to make is, yes, this is one subject which really helps you develop critical analysis, and I've shown you how to a limited extent. Yes, and this critical analysis not only helps in this paper of PSIR, but across UPSC. Yes, so that was the theme, and of course, beyond that, we know there is overlap with PSIR. Why so many students are opting for this paper? Since 2013, the number of students opting for PSIR has increased because there is this humongous overlap. So I generally say that the subject is very lengthy is actually a misnomer. It is not that lengthy if you look at the overlap, because when you are studying similar thing across your optional GS paper 1, 2, 3, 4, it really helps you understand that concept very well and then use it to write good answers. Plus it helps in essay, it helps in the paper of ethics as well. Yes, that is it from my end. Yes, so there is this overlap. Also, it is a highly scoring paper. Yes, on that note, let's conclude this session. I hope it was helpful and it will help you make this choice. It will help clear any confusion that you have and will help you to make your mind as far as choosing your optional is concerned. I hope that you make the right choice and it bears the best results for you. Thank you, all the very best.